All praises to the Most High, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Ra'ach Kodash. Double honors to the elder apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, laboring in his truth in all sincerity. Proverbs 15:10. Correction is grievous unto him that forsaketh the way, and he that hateth reproof shall die. This is an article from RFIDcard.com. What you should know about RFID implants. So I'm just going to scroll down here. I'm not going to read the entire article. Starting with, have you ever thought that one day you can open the door or even complete the payment directly through the implant under the skin without a key? This future is not far away. RFID implants are gradually becoming a reality. As an emerging technology, they are changing our daily lifestyle. From security to medical management, RFID implants are increasingly used in a wide range of application scenarios. I'll scroll down a little bit further to how it works. RFID implants communicate with nearby scanning devices via radio waves. When the scanning device is close to the implant, the chip inside the implant transmits a unique ID number or other data, which the scanning device receives and can then perform the corresponding action, such as unlocking a door, completing a payment, or accessing data. Medical and healthcare. In the medical field, RFID implants can help store and read patient information, improve hospital management efficiency, and reduce medical errors. In the future, these implants may also be used to monitor the health data of patients with chronic diseases and provide personalized medical services. Payment and consumption convenience. As an emerging method of contactless payment, RFID implants are changing the way consumers pay. Imagine that you can simply wave your arm and make a payment without taking out your phone or credit card. With the popularization of technology, this payment method may be used on a large scale in shopping, public transportation, and other scenarios. Lastly, I'll just read the key benefits. Convenience. RFID implants can complete authentication and payment without needing to carry keys or cards. Efficient management. They enhance the efficiency and accuracy of information processing in fields such as medical and security. Customization. RFID implants can be tailored for various uses from health monitoring to access control. So right there under key benefits, we see that word once again, convenience. We scroll back up a little bit to payment and consumption, and once again we see the word convenience. And this is exactly how they're advertising this thing. It's a matter of convenience, making your life easier or more efficient, as they would say. Let's go to Matthew 24:13. This is Hamashiach Yahweh Shai speaking. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And let's also go to Ecclesiasticus. Chapter 2. And I'll start at verse 2. Set thy heart aright and constantly endure, and make not haste in time of trouble. Cleave unto him, and depart not away, that thou mayest be increased at thy last end. Verse 4. Whatsoever is brought upon thee, take cheerfully, and be patient when thou art changed to a lower state. So we're told to cleave unto Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, and we would be increased, meaning blessed at thy last end. Verse 4 tells us, whatsoever is brought upon thee, take cheerfully, and be patient when thou art changed to a lower state. And take cheerfully, basically meaning to be steadfast in our faith in Hamashiach Yahushai, because as we learn in John 16 and 33, he has already overcome this world here. So if we go to that scripture real fast here, this is Hamashiach Yahushai speaking, John 16 and 33. These things I have spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. So if we come back over here, Ecclesiasticus chapter 2, verse 4, whatsoever is brought upon thee, take cheerfully, and be patient when thou art changed to a lower state. So let's go to Galatians 5 and 22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith. So be patient when thou art changed to a lower state. A lot of us, when we reject the MOTB, are going to become unemployed. We're going to lose our businesses, our homes, apartments, cars. We may go days without eating or even showering or bathing. We're going to be brought to a lower state, just as it says here in verse 4 of Ecclesiasticus chapter 2. And this is why we have to remain steadfast. We're going to lose access to any convenience or any material stuff that we've had in this world. And for that, a lot of us are also going to lose people, including family members, wives, girlfriends, baby mamas, whoever, we thought may have been close in our lives. We're going to lose them, because we're not going to have a steady form of income coming in. We're not going to really be able to, from a financial perspective, take care of ourselves or family members or young children. We're going to be 100% reliant upon Hamashiach Yahushai during this particular time here. So this is why when you go back to verse 3 here, cleave unto him and depart not away, that thou mayest be increased in thy last end. And so this is why there's a constant theme here throughout the scriptures to remain patient, to remain steadfast, to endure this during this time of tribulation, because this is pretty much it here. We're at the very end of this thing. And so as we, with each passing day, we get closer to the reality of this particular prophecy coming to pass, which is the prophecy of Revelation chapter 13, verses 16, 17, and 18, so to speak. So once we, we're this close to salvation, and it's important that we take heed to what's written here in verse 3, cleave unto him, meaning Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, and depart not away, that thou mayest be increased in thy last end, that we may be blessed. We want to become joint heirs with Hamashiach Yahushai in the kingdom. So this is what that's referring to, and why we have to remain steadfast in our faith. Whatsoever is brought upon thee, take cheerfully, and be patient when thou art changed to a lower state. And just like I said a few moments ago, we're going to lose our homes, our apartments, our cars. We may go days without eating. We may be walking around with dirty clothes on for a little while. That's just how it's going to be, and once you start preparing your mind, your spirit for this, even you start preparing your body for this, because that's what fasting is for. You learn to go 2 straight days, 3 straight days without eating or drinking, a complete dry fast for 72 hours, and, these are the things that, if your flesh is not hurting a little bit or hurting a lot, then it's really not a true fast. The whole thing about a fast is you're depriving yourself, you're depriving your flesh of all the lustly, worldly, carnal desires that it has. So even if those particular desires may not be sinful, such as just eating, as long as you're eating clean foods, when you deprive your body of it, this is a form of spiritual exercise here. and this starts to increase your faith. The more you see that you can do, a 24-hour fast becomes easy. Most of us, to be quite honest with you, we were doing 24-hour fasts, sometimes 48-hour fasts, before we even came into the truth, especially if you ran on hard times. You may have lost a job. You probably didn't eat for 1 or 2 days. You didn't realize you were fasting, but you were fasting. The Most High, Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, has a way of working where he's already preparing you for when you come into this truth. So a lot of times I found myself, a few years back when I fell on some really hard times, that was very common, where I didn't eat for a day or two, and as I've gotten into the truth and I'm starting to mature more into the truth, I start realizing why these things were already happening before I even got into the truth. So, like I was saying, we're going to lose everything except our faith in Hamashiach Yahweh Shai. We're not looking for convenience, and that's exactly how they're advertising and promoting the MOTB, as a matter of convenience. Let's scroll down to verse 5 here. For gold is tried in the fire, and acceptable men in the furnace of adversity. So as we can see, these devils, they go completely against what the scriptures say, completely against it. The scriptures tell us to endure during this time of trouble, to not make haste during the time of trouble, as it says here in Ecclesiasticus 2, verse 2. Set thy heart aright and constantly endure and make not haste in the time of trouble. So, they're promoting the MOTB, which is the RFID micro C-HIP, as a matter of convenience. It's something that's going to make your life easier. Imagine just how easy and simple it is to make a payment, and all you have to do is just wave your hand or wave your arm. That's how they're going to promote it. They're going to really do this in the medical field. That's how they're going to really kick it off, because so many people, are desperate. That's why every single president who runs now, first there was Hillary Care, then it was Obamacare, now there's Trump Care. Each one of these particular presidents, they all are actually playing into this. This is what the CHIPS Act is all about. If you start reading the CHIPS Act, you'll see how they're leading you right here into where we are right now, right here on the doorstep of the MOTB. So once again, Ecclesiasticus chapter 2, verse 5, for gold is tried in the fire, and acceptable men in the furnace of adversity. There's nothing about convenience there. That's not a scripture that's talking about convenience, your life being made convenient. That's talking about acceptable men being made just the complete opposite way, which is in the furnace of adversity. Let's scroll down to verses 17 and 18. Verse 17, they that fear Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai will prepare their hearts and humble their souls in his sight, saying, we will fall into the hands of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, and not into the hands of men. For as his majesty is, so is his mercy. And we know that the Most High's mercies are everlasting. His mercies endure forever. So once again, this is not a matter of convenience, but instead this is about suffering, long suffering, but, enduring and remaining patient and steadfast and unshakable in our faith in Hamashiach Yahweh Shai, or Yahweh Shai Mashiach now, meaning Yahweh Shai, our Messiah. So we're not about to trade in our salvation for convenience. I want to go back to another article on the MOTB here. So I brought this out in a previous video, but I want to go a little bit further into it. Once again, here is the picture. I'll show the picture before I actually read it. There are two types of RFID microchips. They are both RFID. But it's important to see that there's two types here. That is the X series. That is the one that we are probably most familiar with. It is the one that looks like a small cylinder, a small glass cylinder that's transparent. That is the one that we pretty much see, someone like a tattoo artist would actually use a syringe, and they would put that there. They would insert that in between your thumb and your index finger, in that little web part there in between your thumb and index finger. This is the second type. It's called the flex line. That is also an RFID. It's a flat rectangle. So this flat rectangle, they would put that actually in the back of your hand, or they can put it like on the back of your middle finger or the back of your ring finger or index finger. So that is the flex line. That is the X series. X series, flex line. Implant types and location. I'll just read the types. There are two main types of chips that are implanted. The first type is a small tube-shaped glass cylinder that can be injected into the subcutaneous tissue using a preloaded syringe. The second type is a larger flat rectangular implant that requires a more extensive incision to place the implant. And no matter how much, as a matter of fact, let's just go there really fast. Revelation 13. Verse 16, 17. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So no matter how many times we go into this word, charagma, meaning mark, a stamp, an imprinted mark on the foreheads. A stamp, an imprinted mark of the mark stamped on the forehead or the right hand, as the badge of the followers of the Antichrist. The mark branded upon horses, thing carved, sculpture, graven work of idolatrous images. Strong's definition: a scratch or etching. Stamp, as a badge of servitude or sculptured figure. Statue, graven, mark. So no matter how many times we go into Revelation 13 and 16, no matter how many times ad nauseum the men of GMS, starting with the apostles on down, have gone into this word charagma and have broken it down every single possible, conceivable way it can be broken down, we still have scoffers, mockers, naysayers, doubters, But there's going to come a time very soon when a lot of that is going to cease, and everyone is going to have a decision to make during this particular time of tribulation, the hour of temptation that we are heading into right now. But as you can see here, the word mark, when we looked up charagma, it was a scratch or an etching meaning in this particular case, an etching into the skin. That does not mean it's something spiritual. It's literally a physical mark, a scratch or an etching into the skin. So when we go back here to implant types and location, we clearly see that for the X series, you need a syringe to insert the glass cylinder here, the little small transparent glass cylinder. You need a syringe, a needle, to insert that into your skin. For this one here, the flex line, it clearly tells you that you're going to need a slightly bigger, it says it requires a more extensive incision or a more extensive scratch or a more extensive etching into the skin wherever they're going to implant that. It cannot be more transparent. It cannot be more straightforward than what it's saying. If you cannot understand Revelation chapter 13, verses 16, 17, and 18, then either one, the Most High just completely blinded you, or maybe you do understand, but you're just in denial for prideful purposes, for matters of pride, and you just cannot admit that you're wrong here. But, like I said a couple of minutes ago, we are entering now this hour of temptation, and people are going to have to make a decision. And, we'll see where a lot of people's hearts really lie during that time. So let's look at something else here. So I went a little bit deeper into it. How many different types of implantable RFID and NFC microchips are there? NFC and RFID are the same thing. They work hand in hand. RFID is the radio frequency identification. The NFC is the near field communication. But they both are inside. They both are the RFID microchip. The NFC is just how you make the two-way payment. It's how you make the two-way transaction. But it's the same thing. Just like the flat rectangular one that we just looked at in the X series are the same. It's just two different types. And what you're going to have is some people are going to say, hey, look, the rectangle, because as we're going to see in a couple of minutes here when I keep reading, the rectangular shaped one, they can actually put that in your wrist as well. It's a little bit longer than the glass cylinder, the glass transparent cylinder RFID chip. So it's a little bit longer. So some people are going to opt to get that put into their wrist. And you're going to have people that's going to actually say, hey, look, the scripture says in your right hand. So if I get it in my wrist, that means it's not the RFID, not understanding that it's still for the purposes of buying and selling, as the scripture says. You know, you can't be fickle with this. A lot of times people are so fickle and they become so, their way of thinking is so minute that because here it says the hand, but you can actually get this, which is used for buying and selling. This is a part of the beast system. Some people are actually going to say, hey, look, I got it in my wrist. So that means I don't actually have the MOTB. I don't actually have the mark of the beast. But there are generally two main physical types of implantable RFID NFC microchips: glass and encapsulated cylinders and flat rectangles. But they primarily function as either RFID or NFC, differentiated by operating frequency. I'm not going to get into all of that. Let's get into this this particular article here. The difference between X series and Flex products. Once again, those are the same. Those are both radio frequency identification chips. Those are both RFID chips there. One is the X series, one is the Flex line. There are two types of microchips here, but they are for the same exact purposes, going back to Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 through 18. The primary reason we have two types of chip implant designs has to do with performance. There are other reasons as well. However, performance is the driving factor. So, the X series product line, I'm not going to get into all of that. The good, easily injected with a syringe and needle assembly. It comes preloaded in EO gas sterilized syringes. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to really read all of that. The not so good, the shape and the size can make the X series harder to read. Difficult to fit larger, more capable silicone chips into small tubes. And see, this is what this whole thing was about going on in Sweden. Probably going back to about 2015 or maybe 2016. There's close to 10,000 people in Sweden right now that they've basically been using as guinea pigs, but they've been voluntarily accepting the MOTB over there. And see, the whole time they've been accepting it these past 10 years, they've noticed this type of stuff here. The not so good. The shape and size can make the X series harder to read. So they started coming out with a slightly different product called the Flex product line. The Flex product line was created to address certain performance requirements from some of our customers. Passive RFID works by magnetically coupling with the reader antenna, and the best way to do that is to make the chip antenna identical to the reader antenna in shape and size. The problem is almost all reader antennas are big flat squares or rectangles designed to read access cards, key fobs, contactless payment cards, etc. So I'm not going to read more of that. This is dangerousthings.com. And this article was actually printed back on November 21st. The difference between X series and Flex products. If anybody comes across this and wants to take a look at this particular article that I'm reading. The good, better performance than the X series, sometimes much better. A wider range of specialized chip options and capabilities. Some are installable with modified needle procedures. The not so good. Even with the needle procedure, these are not injectable. A much larger in size, some flex requires a scalpel procedure and sutures. Once again, scalpel, going back to the word charagma, we know what a scalpel is. When you go to the doctor, and they got to make a small incision, they use a scalpel to cut open your skin. This is the same exact instrument that they're going to use to scratch or etch your skin. If you go back to the word charagma in the interlinear for the word mark in Revelation 13 and 16, you'll see the Strong's definition of charagma. You'll see where it says that mark is a scratch or an etching. Literally meaning they're etching into your skin. You remember when you was a kid, you probably used to play with the Etch-a-Sketch, and you would turn that thing, you would turn that little knob, and you were etching like little patterns of drawings on that little device or whatever that was. It's the same thing, except this is an actual cut. This is an actual cut that they're making into your skin using a scalpel for the FlexLine series of the RFID microchip. There's two types. This is how the procedure goes. They have to use a scalpel in order to inject that into your skin, because this one is a little larger, it's a little bigger than the X series. So let's just take a couple of, once again, let's take a look at these pictures here. Once again, the X series, that is the X series there, and this is the FlexLine. They both are RFID microchips that will be implanted into the 2/3 and the heathen and all the other non-believers, scoffers, mockers, doubters, and anyone else who is not of the elect. And there was another picture here that I wanted to show. Oh, here it is here. This is what I was saying earlier. This is the FlexLine again. This is the one. This is an actual, wow, here. So this is right here. That would actually be inside the skin. That is the FlexLine. That is what it looks like. That would actually be, they would etch into your skin using a scalpel, and that's what they will place inside your hand there. So we know that the X series, like I was stating earlier, we've all seen the X-ray picture of the X series RFID chip in between the thumb and index finger and that web part of the hand. But this one here is a little bit different. This is an actual flat microchip here. So this can be put directly in the back of your hand, or even on that part of your middle finger or ring finger or index finger. However, some heathen or 2/3 decide that's where they want it if they go in there and voluntarily take it. So basically what we're seeing here is, they have two different types of RFID micro C-hips that they're about to roll out. They're flat out telling you to your stiff-necked faces that is for digital transactions, buying and selling. And if you don't have it, you're going to be locked out of the B system. As a matter of fact, I'll even come back to this article. This was an article that was just published earlier this year. This particular article came out. The published date just says January 2026. It doesn't even give the exact date that it was published. But this came out earlier this year, and it's clearly telling you right here, according to the Smart Payment Association in 2024, 92% of all payment cards shipped globally were contactless enabled, highlighting the widespread technological readiness that facilitates the adoption of implantable payment solutions. Highlighting the widespread technological readiness that facilitates the adoption of implantable payment solutions. So, I mean, it can't be more crystal clear than this what their plans are. They don't even have to hide their plans because there's so many people out here who's in denial and still think it's a conspiracy theory. So now, because you keep thinking it's a conspiracy theory or it's not true, or you keep convincing yourself as well as convincing others that this, oh no, the MOTB is something spiritual. It's not something physical that literally goes in the back of your hand or in your forehead. No, it's something spiritual. It's a spiritual mark. Meanwhile, they can sit out here and roll this thing out and flat out tell you to your face that the research that they've been doing on this, it actually highlights the widespread technological readiness that facilitates the adoption of implantable payment solutions. So, once again, this is off of TechSciResearch.com. This was an article that came out January earlier this year. So, we still have prideful brothers, who refuse to take heed and continue to mock and scoff against this truth. Isaiah 48:4, we can go into that. Isaiah 48:4 says, and I'll read this in the NLT, "For I know how stubborn and obstinate you are. Your necks are as unbending as iron. Your heads are as hard as bronze." You see that, man? Just hard-headed, man. Niggas is hard-headed. Your heads are as hard as bronze. You don't like correction. You're too prideful to admit you're wrong. You probably got bought off. Or basically, could it be that, you really just love this beast system so much that you'll convince yourself that the MOTB is not the RFID micro C-HIP, so that you can plug yourself right into it and you can continue to enjoy all the conveniences that it has to offer, not realizing that the MOTB RFID micro C-HIP, it is the ultimate form of idol worship. Like the Most High said, let's scroll up to verse 3. KJV, "I have declared the former things from the beginning, and they went forth out of my mouth, and I showed them. I did them suddenly, and they came to pass." Just like this prophecy right here is coming to pass right in our lifetimes. This isn't something that's going to happen, 30, 40, 50 years down the road. This thing right here is weeks away. This is weeks away. It's already happening. There's a company in Wisconsin right now, in this particular country, that's, they're right now, it's still on a voluntary basis, but they're doing it right here in this country. Sweden, they're doing it. Places like, I believe that's Kenya. They're newborn babies. If you look into that, there's some stuff online about what's going on in Kenya with babies, having to get like some type of digital ID. And it's just all kind of stuff. So, so if the Most High said it's going to happen, and, he puts it, it's in the scriptures, it's right there in front of everybody. And it's happening. Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 through 17. So you still have people that's in complete denial about this thing, And like I say, this is what the Most High says here. "For I know how stubborn and obstinate you are. Your necks are as unbending as iron. Your heads are as hard as bronze." Hard-headed niggas. That's exactly what a lot of y'all are out there. And it's just, you don't like correction. But it is what it is at this point. Like I said a couple of times earlier in this particular video right here, we are entering this time right now. The hour of temptation is here. So, you can keep denying all you want, but eventually we're all going to have to make a choice. Proverbs 29:1. "He that being often reproved hardeneth his neck shall suddenly be destroyed, and that without remedy." So the NLT reads as, Whoever stubbornly refuses to accept criticism will suddenly be destroyed beyond repair. And that's where a lot of people are headed. A lot of people are heading there, to be being destroyed beyond repair, basically vaporized in that fervent heat, that ICBM thermonuclear fire. So with that being said, I'm just going to end this here with Revelation. I'll go to chapter 3 and I'll end it with verses 10 through 13. And I'll read that in the KJV. Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I will also keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world, to try them that dwell upon the earth. Behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, in the temple of my power, and he shall go no more out. And I will write upon him the name of my power and the name of the city of my power, which is New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from my power. And I will write upon him my new name. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. I pray this has been edifying and reaches the ears it's supposed to reach. Shalom.